Hello, and welcome to Shrink, the podcast for the mind. I'm Philippe and I talk to the people who want to have a better understanding of their issues with weight and body image. Hello, and welcome back to Shrink. Now, if you just looked at your phone, adjusted your headphones, or gave your car stereo a suspicious tap because you thought something had gone wrong, don't worry. Everything is working perfectly. Those were simply 3 glorious seconds of absolutely nothing. And honestly, they might have been the most valuable 3 seconds of your day. Today's episode is about something that has become incredibly rare. We're talking about nothing. Not the philosophical kind of nothing, not the what's for dinner, nothing kind of nothing. Real nothing. The kind where nothing is demanding your attention. Nothing is buzzing, nothing is pinging. Nothing needs replying to. Nothing is asking you to optimize before your breakfast. Because we've become remarkably uncomfortable with empty space. If we're walking, we're listening to a podcast. Yes, I appreciate the irony. I like you listening to my podcast. If we're standing in a queue, we're scrolling. If we're brushing our teeth, we're catching up on the news. And if we're trying to fall asleep, well, we're somehow watching a woman in Milan reorganize her spice rack. And yes, we stay until she alphabetizes the paprika. We don't seem to have moments anymore. We have content. Our brains have become all-you-can-eat buffets of information. News headlines, emails, WhatsApp messages, podcasts, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, even breaking news about things that stopped being breaking news 3 days ago. We're consuming so much that we've forgotten something rather important. Our minds need silence in the same way our bodies need sleep. Really, our minds need silence in the same way our bodies need sleep. So today, we are doing something rather rebellious. We're going to celebrate doing absolutely nothing. And before you think, well, that's a bit lazy, I would argue it's one of the healthiest things you can do. Let me ask you something. When was the last time you sat in a room with no television, no music, no phone, no book, and simply stared out of the window? Not because you were sad, not because you were waiting, just because. If you're like most people, and like me as well, that idea feels surprisingly uncomfortable, maybe even slightly alarming. We treat empty moments as problems to be solved. If there's a gap in our diary, we fill it. If there's a quiet moment, we reach out for our phone almost automatically. Sometimes I genuinely think our phones don't even have time to miss us anymore. Have you ever unlocked your phone to do one thing, then forgotten what the thing was because Instagram had other plans? But that happened to me quite a few times until I became aware of it. You end up watching a Labrador learning to surf, someone making tiny pancakes for their hamster, and somehow you're now emotionally invested in a stranger renovating a cottage rural in Sweden. 20 minutes later, you finally remember, oh yes, I was going to check the weather. Psychologists have a name for what many of us experience every day. We call it cognitive overload. It's a fancy phrase that basically means your brain is carrying more than it comfortably can. Imagine your working memory as your desk. A tidy desk is manageable. A few papers here, a notebook there, maybe a coffee that's gone cold because you forgot it existed. Now imagine piling onto that desk your work emails, or the latest political crisis, your cousin's holiday photos, a shopping list, 3 unfinished conversations, the song that's been stuck in your head since Tuesday, and the fact that you still haven't booked that dentist appointment. Eventually, there isn't any room left. Your brain is a bit like an old laptop. Not an exciting new one from 2018. It's running short of memory. It's running 40 browser tabs, Spotify, Zoom, 3 documents, a software update it keeps asking you to install, some mysterious program you don't remember downloading, and somewhere one hidden tab is playing music. The fan is working so hard it sounds like it's preparing for takeoff. That's many of us. Except instead of closing a few tabs, we open TikTok. When our brains become overloaded, something interesting happens. We become less patient, less focused, more forgetful. We snap at people we quite like. We lose our train of thought halfway through a sentence. We walk into a room and immediately wonder, why am I here? Sometimes I think half of adulthood is wandering around the house looking for things we've put down ourselves. Now, part of what's keeping this cycle going is dopamine. Poor dopamine gets blamed for everything these days. People often call it the pleasure chemical. It's actually more accurate to think of it as the maybe chemical. It's the little voice that says, go on, refresh one more time. There might be something interesting. Every swipe, every notification, every refresh, your brain is pulling the lever on a tiny slot machine. Maybe this one will be exciting. Maybe this message will change everything. Maybe someone liked that photo you posted. Maybe. Most of the time, nothing particularly remarkable happens. But every now and then, something does. And that's enough to keep us coming back. The trouble is that the more stimulation we feed our brains, the more stimulation they start expecting. Silence begins to feel strange. Stillness feels boring. Doing nothing starts to feel like we're wasting our time. Which explains why some of us have found ourselves buying something online at 2 in the morning that we absolutely didn't need. Apparently, the algorithm thought I urgently required a miniature handheld vacuum cleaner for my keyboard. I don't even remember searching for one. I did that, something that happened to me. The scary part? For a few seconds, it felt like an excellent investment. Fortunately, our brains come with their own reset button. Neuroscientists discovered something called the default mode network. It's like a setting on your computer. It's actually a network in your brain that becomes active when you're not concentrating on an external task. For years, scientists assumed that when we were not actively thinking, our brains were basically idling. And they were completely wrong. When you stop feeding your brain information, your brain gets busy. It sorts memories, processes emotions, makes unexpected connections, files away today's experiences. It's a little like the cleaners coming into an office after everyone has gone home. Nothing exciting appears to be happening, but an enormous amount of work gets done. The problem is, if we never stop consuming, the cleaners never get in. No wonder our minds begin to feel cluttered. We've become obsessed with FOMO, the fear of missing out. Personally, I'd like to start a new movement, the NIS, which would be like something like nothing is sacred, or perhaps more accurately, nothing is necessary. Not every quiet moment has to be filled. Not every thought needs to be distracting. Not every second has to be productive. Sometimes doing nothing, doing absolutely nothing, is exactly what your brain has been asking for all along. And if you've made it so far without simultaneously checking your emails, replying to 3 messages, and ordering a new pair of socks online, well, I'd like to congratulate you. You're already becoming rather good at nothing. Now, before anyone accuses me of inventing a brand new wellness trend, I should say this. The idea of doing nothing is not new at all. Human beings have been talking about the value of quiet for thousands of years. Long before mindfulness apps, long before digital detoxes, long before someone thought charging £180 for a silent retreat was a perfectly reasonable business model. Let's start with Socrates. Poor Socrates. If he were living today, if he were alive today, he'd probably be absolutely exhausted. He famously said, "The only true wisdom is in knowing you know nothing." Can you imagine putting that on a CV? Skills? Well, questioning everything. Areas of expertise? Well, apparently none. I'm not convinced he'd get through the first interview. But he understood something we've largely forgotten. You can't learn if you already think you're full. Wisdom begins with making space. Wisdom begins with making space. Imagine trying to pour tea in a cup that's already overflowing. It doesn't matter how wonderful the tea is. There is simply nowhere for it to go. Well, our minds are a bit like that. We spend so much time filling them with information that we've forgotten to leave any room for reflection. Sometimes I wonder if we've confused information with wisdom, and they're not the same thing. I can know the calorie content of a croissant, the latest political scandal, who won an award last night, and what color trainers are currently fashionable, and still have absolutely no idea how to comfort a friend who's having a difficult day. Information is everywhere. Wisdom usually arrives much more quietly. Socrates would probably have looked at our phones with complete horror. Imagine showing him your average screen time report. 7 hours. Well, it's mostly educational, we tell ourselves. Really? Was that video of a cat learning to play the piano educational? I actually don't answer that. I've looked at videos like that as well, and they're probably not educational. Now, let's travel a bit further east, to ancient China. Lao Tzu, the founder of Taoism, wrote a beautiful idea called Wu Wei. I'm not sure I pronounce it well. Wu Wei. It's often translated as non-doing. Although that's a slightly misleading translation, it doesn't mean lying on the sofa eating biscuits all afternoon. Unfortunately, it means not forcing life unnecessarily, allowing things to happen naturally instead of constantly pushing, striving, and controlling. One of my favorite metaphors comes from Lao Tzu. He said, "We shape clay into a pot, but it's the empty space inside that makes the pot useful. We build a house with walls, but it's the empty rooms, the windows, and the doors that make it somewhere we can actually live." It's such a simple image. The value isn't only in what's there, it's also in what isn't. The empty space gives everything else meaning. Which makes me think perhaps our calendar should look a little more like these pots. Not completely full, with enough empty space left to actually be useful. And if you happen to spend one afternoon doing very little this weekend, Congratulations. You can tell everyone you're embracing ancient Taoist philosophy. It sounded considerably more impressive than I couldn't be bothered. Then, after Lao Tzu, there is Blaise Pascal. Back in the 16th centuries, before smartphones, Netflix, and endless scrolling, he wrote something that feels almost spooky in its accuracy. He said, all of humanity's problems stem from man's inability to sit quietly in a room alone. Think about that for a second. He wrote those words hundreds of years ago. No notifications, no TikTok, no YouTube, no group chats, no breaking news alert every 6 minutes. And yet, he still noticed that people struggle to be alone with themselves. Imagine what he would think now. Today we've built an entire economy around making sure we're never left alone with our thoughts. Our attention has become one of the most valuable commodities in the world. Every app wants it. Every platform wants it. Every company wants just 1 minute of it. The goal isn't really to inform us. The goal is to keep us looking. Just one more video, one more article, one more notification, one more scroll. We've become incredibly good at filling up every tiny gap in our day. Waiting for the lift? Phone. Standing in the supermarket queue? Phone. Waiting for someone to arrive? Phone. Sometimes I wonder if there was a 15-second pause during a conversation, half of us would instinctively check our emails. And I include myself in this. I'm not speaking from the top of a mountain after 6 months of a silent meditation. I'm very much a recovering overstimulator. I've caught myself unlocking my phone hundreds of times during the day, forgetting why, locking it again, then unlocking it 30 seconds later, as though the answer might have appeared in the meantime. It's almost funny, but actually, it's funny and not funny, but it's let's say it's funny and revealing. Because underneath all that stimulation sits a slightly uncomfortable question. What happens if we stop? For many people, the answer is anxiety. Silence can feel surprisingly loud. Without distractions, thoughts we have successfully been avoiding suddenly clear their throats and say, "Excuse me, could we have a little chat?" And that's often the very moment we reach for another distraction, another podcast, another message, another quick scroll. Not because we're weak, because we've forgotten that our minds are perfectly capable of sitting with themselves. Like any muscle, it's simply something we stop practicing. And the irony is that we're searching everywhere for peace. New apps, new productivity systems, new morning routines, new supplements, new gadgets. When one of the oldest ideas in human history has been quietly waiting for us all along. Sometimes the answer isn't adding something, it's removing something. Sometimes the most nourishing thing you can give your mind is absolutely nothing. And before you congratulate yourself, if you've been listening to all this while simultaneously replying to emails and comparing prices on socks, I know your secret is safe with me. So, we've talked about nothing. We've looked at the science. We've borrowed a little wisdom from Socrates, Lao Tzu, and Pascal. But there's a problem. Listening to someone talk about doing nothing isn't actually doing nothing. What you're doing right now is not doing nothing if you're listening to that podcast. So I'd like to try a little experiment. And yes, this is the part where some of you are already hovering over the fast forward button. Don't. Just stay with me for the next minute. I'm going to stop talking completely. There won't be any soothing piano music, no bird singing, no ocean waves, no guided meditation voice telling you to breathe into your inner light. Just silence for 60 whole seconds. Your only job is to notice whatever happens. You don't have to empty your mind. You don't have to become enlightened. You don't have to enjoy it. Just don't reach for your phone. If a thought pops into your head, let it come. If another one follows, let that come too. You don't need to chase them. You certainly don't need to start reorganizing your mental to-do list. Simply notice. And if your nose suddenly becomes incredibly itchy, well, good luck. Are you ready? Your 60 seconds of absolutely glorious nothing start now. Well, how was that? For some of you, it probably felt surprisingly peaceful. For others, that was the longest minute you've experienced since someone explained cryptocurrency at a dinner party, for example. I don't get anything about cryptocurrency, by the way. Perhaps your brain immediately started shouting things like, did I reply to that email? What are we having for dinner? I should probably water the plants. Did I lock the front door? Or perhaps I wonder if I need another pair of socks. See, the socks are back. If your mind wandered all over the place, congratulations. You have a perfectly normal human brain. The goal wasn't to stop thinking. In my mind, that's impossible. The goal was simply to notice how difficult many of us find it to do nothing. If you felt restless or impatient or slightly uncomfortable, psychologists have a term for that. It's called boredom intolerance. Now, boredom has had a terrible reputation over the last couple of decades. We're taught to avoid it at all costs. The second boredom appears, well, we eliminate it. Phone, music, television, a snack. I did a whole episode about boredom and how it can affect our eating habits. Another quick scroll, another anything but boredom. But boredom isn't actually the enemy. In many ways, it's the doorway. And it's the doorway because once your brain gets past that initial discomfort, something rather lovely starts to happen. Your thoughts begin slowing down. Connections begin appearing. Problems untangle themselves. Ideas quietly wandering without knocking. Think about your best ideas. They rarely arrive when you're staring aggressively at your computer saying, come on, be creative. Creativity doesn't respond well to bullying. It tends to appear while you're walking the dog, for example, or standing in the shower, driving home, looking out of a train window, or just sitting quietly doing, well, nothing. There's a lovely story about Isaac Newton. According to legend, I wasn't there, so I'm not sure this really happened. He was sitting beneath an apple tree when the famous apple fell. Whether every detail of that story is true doesn't really matter. The point is, he wasn't multitasking. He wasn't checking notifications every 30 seconds. His mind had room to notice something that most people would probably have ignored. As a psychotherapist, I see this very often. People often tell me, I've tried thinking about this constantly, but I still can't find an answer. And strangely enough, the breakthrough often comes a few days later. During a walk, while cooking, in the bath, or just sitting quietly with a cup of tea. For me, it would be a cup of coffee. Our minds don't always solve problems by working harder. Sometimes they solve them by relaxing enough to let the pieces rearrange themselves. It's a bit like one of those snow globes. Shake it constantly and everything stays cloudy. Put it down for a while and slowly everything settles. You begin to see clearly. And perhaps that's what doing nothing really is. It's not wasting time. It's allowing the dust to settle, giving your mind permission to catch up with your life. Because here is the truth. Your brain has been working incredibly hard every single day, and it deserves the occasional coffee break, even if it doesn't drink coffee.